Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CEO Magazine Tech Talks. Again, I'm Nick Halsey, CEO of Okera Software, and with me today is JoAnn Stonier for the second in our series of conversations about her role as Chief Data Officer of Mastercard. JoAnn, in our last segment, you talked a little bit about how you began with this concept of privacy by design and how Mastercard was one of the founders of that philosophy, which is fairly widespread now. And that as your role and the role of data at Mastercard evolved, you took on more of a data by design strategy. Could you tell us a little bit about that evolution and how you started to think differently about leveraging the data you were managing?
So sure, I want to just give credit that privacy by design was originally coined by a Canadian privacy commissioner. So we want to give Ann Cavoukian props for that phrase, first of all. We were an early adopter because it really resonated with us as we were trying to create products and solutions that were compliant with privacy law. But we expanded it. What we did is we recognized that if you could incorporate requirements, right, whether it was security requirements or privacy requirements into your product development process, right, your design process, it would make it so much easier than having to retrofit it at the end if you hadn't considered it. And all it takes is one or two people to not come to you and figure out the requirements up front, and then they have to figure it out on the back end. And so many times that would require rework that would just not have been necessary if they had thought through some of the requirements up front. But we expanded it into a process that we call really data by design, because it's no longer just about personal data or compliance with privacy law, although all of that is important, as is our dedication to security and privacy just in general, because those are things that are baseline for Mastercard. But what we do now is that data is part of a data review, whether it's about data quality, data accuracy, data completeness, data governance, all of that is baked into our product development process. Why do we do it though? We do it because we believe that data, like many other organizations, data is really now becoming the raw material of innovation. And while I think many chief data officers, we talked earlier about how I actually got my position, Nick, and it was from an interesting lane. A lot of other chief data officers also got their jobs out of a compliance function, but mostly because they were asked to organize their data for other compliance requirements, which is kind of a defensive posture to demonstrate the efficiency of their data, the effectiveness, the organization of their data. We at Mastercard really put ourselves on the offensive. We said, you know what, we think we can innovate with our data in a compliant way, and the privacy and data by design processes really give us an ability to both demonstrate that compliance, but really give us the ability to innovate with our data, meaning we can come up with products and solutions that really meet the needs of our different customers, right? Whether that's our banks or our merchants, or increasingly governments, academic institutions, NGOs, civil society partners that look for us to make sense of an awful lot of economic information, right? Based on purchasing patterns that we can see because of our global data set. We also can explain things like fraud, right? We also do a lot with our data around security, right? We want to prevent the incursion of attacks that keep changing all the time on our network. So there's an awful lot of richness in the information that we have, as well as we continue to grow and mature as a company and our society becomes increasingly digital, we're exploring things like digital identity, how to do that in a very safe and secure way. All of this is enabled by a data by design process.
So do you have a product design team that thinks about what new products can we bring to market that are powered by the data that you have an incredible database, tracking financial transactions around the world. How do you think about leveraging that? How do you prioritize which products to build?
So each of our business lines is dedicated to a different type of product set or solution set, right? So we have a team that's dedicated to fraud and cyber and security, right? And that team's mandate, within that team, I have a member of my team that is part of that business team, but they report into the data office, right, or the data team. Then there is a team that is focused on commercial analytics. And really, those are the bigger, the deeper, broader data insights for our merchant partners, our financial partners. We also have a group that really focuses on social impact, right? Because Mastercard has a very big commitment to doing well by doing good, right? So we are looking at what are the kinds of solutions that we can come up with that can help out with crises like COVID or climate change or responses to climatic events like hurricanes, right? As well as our core business, which is closer to our natural payments lane, right? Things that include how do we make sure that we understand how new ways of paying, how do we keep those secure, right? We're moving more and more away from traditional card-based payments to payments on devices. How do we make sure all of that makes sense in the next iteration? How do we keep that information secure? But what other information should we think about processing? So all of our product development teams are versed very well in the data sets that they use for innovation. Much of it is a common data set, but they add in other data sets depending upon what they are trying to accomplish with the data.
So it sounds like the product design is distributed across the organization into the different lines of business, and then you're embedding your team members into those design groups.
Yes, but we have one common product development process that all of us use. So that makes it easier for cross-business collaboration, right? So when we need somebody from our data and services business, which is our primary commercial insights business, to go work in a team for social impact, right? A smart cities, for example, project, we can cross-pollinate different members from different teams because we use a common type of product development process, and data design is part of that.
Are there any key principles that you've developed that you think would be useful to other CDOs to think about as they're struggling to figure out how to build new products and capabilities around their data platforms?
Yes, we developed last year a set of common principles because we realized that we were constantly working with data, but we really needed to articulate it. And while everybody understood it, we realized it was time to articulate our data responsibility principles. And I talked about we design with people at the center of our practices. So we started with, well, what do we believe about an individual and their data, right? Because that data is usually, if we're using data that's personal in any way, and our card data, even though we don't get a lot of personal data in our card transactions, we get date, time, place of transaction, the amount, the merchant, right? We also get, though, the card number. And we protect that, and even though we don't know that it's yours, I don't know that it's Nick's card, we protect it as if we do. And so we actually came up with the principles of, well, for an individual, we believe that they own their data, that they should understand what it's being used for, and they should be able to control it. So we have a portal where you can come and tell us and find out what data we have about you. But we also believe that you should benefit from its use and that you should be able to expect world-class security and privacy for the data that we do have about you. Now, that's what we believe about you. Well, then the natural question is, well, what's Mastercard going to do about it, right? So what are our responsibilities, right? So our responsibilities are that A, we're going to be accountable, right? That we're accountable for what we do with data. And there's a whole list of things that we do to make sure that we protect your information. Now, it starts, of course, with privacy and security, right? So we provide security, we provide privacy, we respect it, we comply with all the laws, but we also have a portal where you can come in and find out what, you can ask for a copy of your data, you can ask for it to be corrected, which a lot of laws are now creating, but we also try to give you even more information there. Then there's transparency. We want to be transparent about what we do with data and give you as much control over your data as possible. Now, we're really a B2B2C company. So sometimes we have to tell you to go to your bank because that's really where your primary relationship is. But we try to explain that so you can understand our business model. Then we also talk about integrity. And what do we mean by integrity? Well, integrity is really important when you talk about things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the next generation of data use, right? We see it coming up with COVID. We see what's happening because of bias in data sets. We're committed that we will have integrity in how we use data, how we understand data, and how we navigate the next generations of data use. We have a commitment to quality and accuracy, consistency, completeness of data. We're on the lookout for fake data and the manipulation of it. And then our last two principles are simple. We're going to innovate with data, and we want you to know that we're always going to be after better products and solutions, and we're going to use our data for social impact. So we are going to use data to try to solve things like COVID. We will use our data to help people after a hurricane know where can they transact. We've been helping during COVID to let people know where can they go shopping because, right, merchants are open, merchants are shut. Those are the types of things we mean when we say we'll use our data for social impact. So those are our data responsibility principles, and everybody understands them at Mastercard and how they apply to their job.
So those last two examples you gave, which were really around public sector assistance in crisis management with COVID or a hurricane, those would not be probably what people would think would be a traditional use case for a financial services organization to be pursuing. So did lightning strike in the bottle? What inspired you to realize that you had the ability to sort of go outside the lines a little bit and have this creative use cases for the data assets you have?
One, we've had a commitment for about 6 years or more now to data for social impact, recognizing that we have a commitment like every other company for philanthropy, that, you know, we committed money like a lot of other organizations and people's time. Increasingly, we were also helping out with our technology. But as we did that, we found out from our partners that data was also a resource that organizations were interested in. Now, we do not share our raw data with anybody, but what we found was that we could share information insights with civil society organizations and governments in particular that would be helpful. So for example, if a city is considering investing in putting a hospital or a university in a particular location, we could do a lookalike of what happened in a similar city after and before they, before and after they made a similar investment, what happened to the economic activity of a similar downtown. So we began to realize that our data could also have social and societal positive impacts if we began to think about it a little bit differently than before. But what happened, so we created a group to start doing that type of product development. Now it's not really products, but solution development, right? And so things like after hurricanes, it became like, what happened was first responders would say to us, can you tell us? And the reality was, well, of course we can tell because we're not getting any transactions from closed gas stations, right? There's no electricity, the gas station isn't working. The minute it comes back online, we can see transactions being processed. Well, we can publish an index that helps first responders know where to go get gas, where they can eat, right? As they're trying to get the power grid restored after things like Hurricane Laura. So it was a very natural way for us to just reach back out and give back to the communities that we actually serve. And so COVID has been another opportunity for us to figure out how can we serve? How can the different kinds of data points that we have be helpful in figuring out how do we help in this pandemic?
Those are really inspiring use cases. And I think it underscores the value that the safe and secure access to and analytics around aggregate data, not individual data, can be of tremendous value if we all work together to figure out how to do that in a secure way that is compliant with privacy and regulation. And
again, when it's part of the fabric of how we do things, we start with that as part of the baseline of the design case, right, where we started this conversation. So if privacy and security are part of how you design, it's much easier to figure out, well, then what value can we bring in the product or solution? And we do it in a way that really honors the individual.
That's a fantastic takeaway from this segment, JoAnn. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you again shortly as we dig in on a few other topics to wrap up our series of interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you.